Greetings, ghouls and goblins, to a terrifying episode of Dancing with the Bards. My name is Ian, and I'm joined by my fiendish co-hosts, Brooke and Will.
Hey!
Chiming in for our cryptid demographic this month is our resident humanitang and honorary bard, Larry.
Hello.
Welcome back.
I've been living in the rafters.
Our game this month, kicking off our third year of Dancing with the Bards, is a rules-light, open-ended TTRPG, Monster of the Week. Originally designed by Michael Sands in 2012, the revised game was republished by Evil Hat Productions in 2015. This game takes inspiration from trends of serialized monster hunting adventures, from Supernatural to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, to allow players to create a story in which they are all that stands between civilization and some unearthly threat that week. The game recommends a group of 3 to 5 players. We had 4 for our most recent playthrough, and only requires some papers and 2 6-sided dice per player. The Game Master is there to help the players progress through the story. The challenge ratings for rolls are predetermined, and it is the Game Master's job to determine consequences based on the players' rolls. This game encourages connections between characters during setup, focusing heavily on narrative and problem-solving over rules-heavy gameplay. Before we get into scores, I wanted to take a moment to discuss open-ended RPGs. I know I've gotten all of you to play some at one point or another. We've covered Elfin Folk, Excellence, 10 Candles before. And I'd like to hear some people's thoughts on that style of RPG or how this game compares to previous experiences.
If I can go first, I just want to say I am starting to really love these open-ended RPGs. You kind of gave me a taste for it with Elfin Folk, and you've been kind of drip-feeding it to me since then. I got the open-ended RPG monkey on my back, Ian.
Depending on how you run through these, they can be a lot of fun. It definitely depends on the group you're playing with, but I've had some pretty good results.
I think I mentioned this during 10 Candles, but my first intro to any kind of gameplay was a version of this where you would just be with your friends and they would make scenarios and you'd be running through a haunted house or something silly while walking together. Like it was playing pretend, but for middle schoolers.
Yeah.
So this always brings me back to like when I first started gaming, and now that I have words for it, it makes me feel more a part of the community. Like back then I didn't know what this was called. I just knew this is what me and my nerdy friends did at leadership conferences in DC. I had no idea that while we were walking through like the mall that going like, oh, you see a clown in the distance. Do you run from it or do you go towards it? Like that kind of stuff is this. It's just a nice touch point for me.
So, most of the open-ended RPGs I've played, I've usually not been a fan of, though this one really did stand out to me. Most of them I feel lack some sort of essential structure, and it's really up to the game master and the players to kind of create something, but this I feel has enough bones per se to work with, as opposed to kind of just giving you a set of 3 rules and being like, go wild, have fun. Because in the wrong group, that's a miserable time.
I think that's a point to bring too. Like our group that we had for this was pretty good. Like we worked together and communicate pretty well as a team.
Yeah.
So I think we had that on our side for most of the playthroughs we've had with these type of games on the podcast.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say for this particular game, because it doesn't apply to all open-ended, this is definitely a shining example of an open-ended RPG. No question. But we have run this before for new players and new people in large groups. I will definitely say stick to the 3 to 5 recommended players. But if you're going to introduce this game to someone, and we'll talk more about this in setup, the character creation makes it pretty smooth. And they have PDFs for the what rules there are for the game that make it a little easier to introduce someone new to. Like me and Brooke, when we learned it through our Friday group.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
It suddenly became something similar to the anime campaign for us.
Mm-hmm.
That was the other open-ended.
Another open-ended.
Yeah. That was we did that one. That is, we have covered that. We've actually covered all the ones we mentioned, to be fair, but anime we have covered way early.
I think that's episode 12. I think that was a year ago today.
No, we didn't do that for October. We did Betrayal
Oh, you're
for
right.
1 October, and we did
10
10
candles.
Candles. All right, so going into our rubric then, with that discussion out of the way, number of players.
I think we all know where this is going.
Yeah, 3 to 5 is a good space for me. I will say you could probably do something with just a 1 player and a game master kind of thing with this. I don't know how fun that would be, but it has
some people
potential.
really enjoy that style, though.
Yeah,
But at a certain point, that just kind of becomes RP with extra steps.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's RP with a framework.
I also do see really interesting potential with the amount of characters that were there. If you were to have like 3 or 4 small groups work on a mystery together, like on 2 or 3 days out of the week, and then you all meet like a 10-person group to discuss events. I could see a really interesting potential for that.
Yeah,
that sounds fun.
That actually does sound really fun.
I wish we had people who would do that, but I don't think we could get enough people to agree to that.
I could probably get 2 that we could all tolerate, but like that's my contribution.
I have 2 that
we all tolerate.
we tolerate.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done this with 7 people before, and it's definitely too much in one sitting.
Yeah, I feel like 7 people at one table would be a lot, but like I said, if you do like, 1 week is one group, 1 week's another group, and then at the end of the month you all meet together to like discuss your findings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah,
not normally one for mission sessions, but I'm glad I missed those sessions. I've heard horror stories.
yeah. Well, it wasn't too bad. It just it bogs things down a lot because everyone wants a creative solution to a problem, but when you have like 6 players.
6 creative solutions gets a little too creative.
Yeah. Not everyone can be a Fred.
Yeah.
I will this also takes some inspiration from like Scooby-Doo mysteries too.
I did want to like tie
What about
into that a little
Jabberjaw?
bit.
Of course, and Jabberjaw. And whatever the one was with the buggy.
Speed buggy.
Speed buggy, yeah.
You're stealing my thoughts, Ian.
My big thing is 3 to 5 is perfect only because there's no real turn order. So it's everyone just talking at once. And if you get more than 5 people talking over each other, it starts to get chaotic and there's always someone who feels like they can't talk. It's the sweet spot, for sure.
Yeah, it has an interesting concept where instead of everyone having turns and like the monster having a turn, they retaliate based on what you do. So like if you go to attack them, they just automatically attack you back. So there's a lot less rolling for the DM and stuff, but it makes turns very unique, and I think it kind of adds to that number of players.
That's very fair. And I mean, you have the unique outlook of being the game master for this. So how was it not being able to roll for your attacks?
So I mean, we'll probably cover that a bit in like Ready to Play and stuff too, because I did give it a 2 for that kind of thing. But it was unique. I'll leave it there for now.
Okay.
Because that's one of my few 2s here. So definitely a topic we're gonna circle back to.
Spoiler.
I know. But inclusivity.
Gave that a 3. I'll spoil mine too. It's a clean sweep for systems for me.
I gave it a 2 for the inclusivity. I just felt there was a lot of reading. It's very reading heavy for the character sheets.
Yeah, I gave it a 2 for the same reason. I think it's important to say that once you get through the first couple of blocks of text and it explains what you're supposed to be doing, it's very streamlined. Everything makes a lot of sense. But
does also help that like everyone has the same for one sheet. Everyone has a set of base skills that they all follow.
Yeah, and I mean those are the actions. Everyone has relatively standardized actions. I will say when it got to picking the individual skills originally, it didn't do a great job of explaining pick 3 until you get to the bottom and it says pick 3, if I'm remembering that correctly.
Yeah.
So I remember going through it and being like, wow, my guy can do a whole lot of things. Some of these things paired together seem kind of broken. And then I realized I can only get 3 of them. But Other than that, I think it's a fairly inclusive game, aside from the reading
yeah.
aspect.
Yeah, I also landed at 2 on inclusivity for it, because, I mean, besides from reading, I feel like, yeah, everything else checks those boxes for me, but some people struggle with that more than others. Some people are slow readers, some people are fast readers, and then the fast readers kind of sit there, and I'm like, yo, come on, man, it's just 3 skills, just read what they do, let's go.
Yeah, my reading comprehension is not all it's cracked up to be.
I found that like the way it was written was interesting enough that I didn't mind doing the reading.
Yeah.
Like there were enough tiny little jokes and quips as you went on that it kind of kept me going. In general,
keeps you engaged. It feels like they're talking to you.
Yeah.
You kind of get like a little bit of character lore with each like sheet as well. I feel.
Whereas if you go through like the D&D player's handbook, it feels like you're just reading through like a automobile manual.
Like,
can I spill a secret here?
Yeah.
I still have not read through the manual all the way.
No one has.
I have skimmed only what I needed.
I don't believe anyone has fully memorized the player's handbook, and if they have, I don't want to meet you.
I know one, and we know him.
Yeah, I know.
He tabs everything.
Yes, he does. I'm glad that you and I thought of the same person in this.
I probably should have thought of the same person.
I can think of 2 people.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, and Steven too, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
So
one of them is playing D&D with is my favorite experience, because I'm still learning by the seat of my pants, and I've run 5 different D&D campaigns. And every time I'll kind of be like, well, I don't know what that does, actually. So let's all take a 10-minute break.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go read.
I will consult the ancient texts.
But I think that kind of brings us into comprehension a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a lot more streamlined than a lot of games I've played. Everything you need to know is right there on the table. Though I also did give it a 2 because, once again, as Will mentioned earlier, the selection during character creation and whatnot was a little weird, where it would, even like your character fleshing out, it would give you like 7 options. They'd be like, you can have 1, and I'm like, why didn't we lead with that?
That's a big thing for me too.
I wish I had the character sheets in front of me. I thought it said it right next to the header.
No, when you get to
grab them. Yeah.
No, it was underneath. It'd be like, you can have a gun, a bat, an axe, and I'm like, all of them?
So yeah, on the first page
I thought it said right next to it.
No, and then also the other thing I want to bring up too is where it had like range, AoE, effect kind of all listed together. It'd be like short, hard, messy, and I'm like, that's a really weird thing to call a weapon.
Yeah, hand hurt too. That was a great one.
Yeah.
That was something I pointed out, I think, when we were playing, is for all the sheets and explanations it had, it should have definitely had more explanations on what each of the weapon types mean.
Just needed commas.
Yeah, that's it. That'll fix everything. It's a comma. And aside from that, everything's pretty self-explanatory. Like knife, hand, hurt too.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. That a knife goes in your hand and it hurts for 2. Just the commas, all we're asking.
But without commas, it just sounds like you're hurting your hand
Yeah.
while using your knife. No hilt, only blade.
It's like a Binding of Isaac weapon.
So I felt looking for my fire axe.
But I did want to throw in this one thing into comprehension. This is very nitpicky of me. Why did you put all of the fleshing out of the character's name, the way he looks, all that stuff? That should be like one of the first things you do. Not after you've picked equipment and stats and all that. It should have been the first thing on the first page.
See, now I do my characters in reverse. So I make the stats, and that tells me who he is. So, like, this is my normal thought process. That's so cool.
Yeah,
I didn't even think about that.
I do it the complete other way. I come up with a concept for a character usually, and then I like, okay, well, they do this. They should have stats that align like this.
Okay.
I kind of do both. I have a general idea of what I want. I flesh out the stats, and then I'm like, okay, well, if he does this, then he should probably have like this thing here, kind of.
Yeah, I kind of do them side by side.
I take the full ADHD approach.
Yeah, just everything all at once.
I usually know gender, and that is it. Mostly because I'm very conscious of, usually I only play male characters, so I try and evenly disperse male and female characters now.
That's fair.
As far as materials go, though, that is my other 3 in system.
I also gave it a 3.
Yeah.
The PDFs are very handy. You can find them just about anywhere.
But even on top of that, the quality of the book itself is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't get to lay my hands on it, but like just seeing you flip through it, it's a high quality book. It's full color, right?
Yeah, full color. It also helped that Chris had tabbed about half of it so far.
Oh, did it come with that?
No.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
But I don't know what the quality for the soft cover is, but I assume it's probably
similar,
pretty
at least.
I'm probably going to pick up the soft covers, so if there's any issues, I will add it into the description of this.
Okay. Yeah. But, I mean, yeah, for materials, the book is not particularly expensive. You get a PDF when you buy it from them. You can, I think there's also, not including like stuff for extras and community. They have, what's the word for it? When you have assets for Roll20 and Foundry for this too.
Assets for Roll20 is $25, so it's a $5 upcharge.
Yeah. But
still.
But I don't know if that comes with the book or not. That's my only thing. Like, I don't know if it comes with a PDF version of it or just the assets for $25.
With just the assets for that's like a pre-made character sheet where you just select things and play.
And even still beyond that, I mean, do we know if the assets are just for specific campaigns, or are they free-floating assets that you can use to make your own modules after the fact?
More than likely, they're free-floating modules. The stuff for the campaigns for this, and the thing with a lot of this stuff ties all into each other, but a lot of the the modules and stuff are all player-made. So there's only a few, I think, pre-made adventures, and I don't know if the one we played was one of them or not. I think it was, because on the PDF I got, it said original adventures, but who knows?
Yeah.
But that's kind of the whole point with this, and we'll go into the fact that they basically have an OGL later. But any modules they'd have on Roll20 would probably be player-made.
Okay.
So probably also just free-floating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would make sense for the type of system this is to have it that way anyway.
Yeah. But, I mean, that just adds to the value of it. You're not paying $25 for a single module at that point. You're paying $25 for every conceivable module.
Yeah.
Hey, Ian.
Hey, yeah.
How was setting it up?
Oh, I mean, so easy. I hadn't played this in like 3 years. I spent maybe 2 or 3 hours just going through all the rules, and that's just because I'm very nitpicky. Getting your characters together took all of like half an hour?
No, like 20 minutes.
15.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like 15 either because we were having fun while it was happening.
Yeah. But between character creation and creating like relationships for the characters, because that's another thing that they have you do too, is they want each character to have at least one connection with another person at the table. And so they have history set up in the sheet for suggestions, and you can figure things out as you need to.
Honestly, I think when I run anything, like if I do run a game in general, I will be doing that no matter the system I use, because it really did help form a general consensus on what was going on.
I actually really enjoyed the setup of this, because the one thing that I usually dread about doing an RPG that's going to be a one-shot is creating a character, because I'm going to spend 45 minutes creating a character I'm going to play for 2 and then never even mention them again. But the fact that character creation was 10, 15 minutes, there wasn't a lot of dice rolling, there wasn't a lot of... I mean, there was background, but it was relevant background. And it was a nice change to see something like that.
Yeah. I mean, even going beyond that, I don't know how it was for you guys, but with my guy, because I play the Snoop, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things it recommended was using your current party's composition to make them your TV crew. Which I thought was a pretty neat concept. I don't know if you guys had something similar in yours.
The Snoop is one of the newer ones too. That might be why it has some extra stuff. They had 2 added. I know the Snoop was one, and I want to say Spooktacular was the other one.
That was like the magician.
Yeah, like a showman magician.
There's one complaint I feel that I do have about setup though and character creation in general. and that was the kind of locked stats. I liked it, but I also wasn't a fan because there was only 5 options total.
Mhm.
So, and it seems like depending on what character you pick, there's just certain things that there's no way that character will ever be good at. Like me, I think all of mine were either a 0 or a -1 on tough. So I don't fight. The character I picked, I just don't do it.
I mean, I feel like that's something you could home rule too.
Yeah.
They have options for stat increases at level ups, but yeah, for the most part, you're never really going to be good at certain things as certain characters. That's something you definitely learn and know ahead of time for your next playthrough.
Yeah.
But for your first playthrough, I can see how that'd be a little like a bummer.
I mean, but I feel like with an open-ended game like this, you do need to put some guardrails in place just to prevent your party from being just like superhumans.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes away a lot of the challenge if you have a character that's just good at everything all the time.
Well, the stat totals that they offer too are all equal a certain number, so you can never really be overpowered because you're not rolling for any stats.
But that's kind of what I'm getting at. You can't have a +1 on everything. Every one of, at least for me, every one of them came with a stat that you're good at and a stat that
you're bad at, and then one that you're just totally neutral.
Exactly, one that you're neutral, and then one that you're kind of okay and kind of bad at. And sometimes you can swap it out for being kind of good in something, for being really bad in 2 things, and being kind of okay in 2 things, and really good in 1. But I think that was a pretty cool concept.
I think if I'm trying to do the math in my head without seeing the paper, they all added up to 4 in some way, but none were greater than a 2.
Yeah.
So you couldn't do a home rule, because I'm a very big proponent of take what resonates, leave what doesn't. If you didn't want to do that rule, as long as it was in that 4 range or that somewhere in there, I feel like you could do it anyway. Although the skills you have correspond usually with the array they give you.
Yeah, and some of the abilities, like you were the Flake, Brooke, and I played the Flake before. I know that it actually lets you use some of your better stats for some of the basic moves. Like I know you could do Sharp instead of Charm for what's the word?
Intimidation, I think is what it was. Or persuasion.
Persuasion, yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, the mundane had a lot of those too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like you could work around it, but it would just be more work and some test trials to see what was the sweet spot on balance.
Yeah.
Speaking of skills, though, the rate of play on this, I gave it a 2, but that's just because it's an RPG. Some people just aren't going to be into it. Sometimes people will get distracted and kind of just drift off for the rest of the session. That started happening to me towards the end a little bit, where I was just kind of like, okay, we know how this is going to end. We know what we got to do, but this is still going to be a half an hour here. So at first it was awesome. I was super into it, but I still have to dock a point for it. I feel like it should have been a half point. If anything, I might just switch that around a little bit, because I kind of want to give a half point off to
I did something similar, yeah. Half point off, because I for me it was more from the perspective of how the DM was handling things. Not that you were handling it bad, but it felt kind of clunky at times, where we would attack and the monster would immediately attack, and so if we had 3 attacks going on, the monster would have 3
attacks,
exactly, and it just felt very fast at times when it really shouldn't have, and then it felt slow again when
what it feel like it should have been faster.
No, not even that.
Exploring around.
Exactly. It just it kind of ramped up the pace of the game very, very fast, and then was kind of just back to normal.
I mean, that's also how we attacked it, though. I feel like we probably shouldn't have been as bold as we were.
You're right. The first time, maybe we shouldn't have tried to solo the mummy.
We also probably shouldn't have broken into the museum in the middle of the night.
That was also, and we probably shouldn't have threatened to kill the guards.
Hey,
A lot of bad choices.
We did not threaten the guards. We suggested we should kill the guards. The guards were never threatened. They never knew.
That's what happens when you bring a cranky old man to like a museum at midnight.
And a 16-year-old who bought a van outside of Arby's that had a 357 in it.
You're both lucky that they never searched you.
I keep my gun well hidden.
I don't. Mine was in the leg of my overalls.
So, for rate of play, I did say before, I gave it a 2. For being a game master, it is still a lot of fun to see you guys figure things out and solve puzzles, and it was nice to focus on that kind of thing, as opposed to this rule does this rule does that. I did still have a couple moments of that, like with the combat, like you mentioned, because it doesn't feel right when things just automatically hit. Even as like a dungeon master or game master who always likes to win, I was like, that feels like cheating.
Again, it's just D&D withdrawals.
Yeah, it is. But it does give me a little less to do because I don't actually roll anything as a game master for this. My job is to focus entirely on narrative, and all of your rolls are already predetermined because your saving DCs are predetermined because you already know that if you get a 10 or more, you succeed. If you get a 7 to 9, it's a partial, and if you get less, it's a fail. So you just roll that, add your stat, and you guys tell me if you pass or failed and how you do it. And I just say, this is your consequence, or this is what happens. So it's fun, but at times it does get a little slow for the game master. I will also say with the what you were talking about with the combat, I did speed it up towards the end because you went through the process of setting a trap, and that's kind of what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to go at these things directly because they're monsters, they're terrifying, and you're just people.
Yeah.
One of you literally had no powers or abilities. You're the mundane. You shouldn't be here. Gun.
He had a gun superpower.
Gun. My superpower is bullet.
I mean,
also,
are you trying to tell me Safari Ted is any better than your character, though?
Really quick, backing up.
Pokey religions. Fancy weapons are no match for a blaster in your hand.
The cops wouldn't have searched me. I was a 16-year-old. You can't pat down
you
a
are
kid.
A 16-year-old in DC. They most certainly can and will and have.
They should not. I will call my parents' lawyers.
So, I gotta know, Larry, you buy more games than anyone.
Yes.
Pricing on this, what do you think?
I think it is a very fair price. As someone who spent, well, this goes for 20 to 40 from what I've heard. I spent recently $60 on the Paranoia starter set, which I would love to do at one point. But that I feel like I got ripped off on, and this is $20 cheaper. I mean, it comes with a deck of cards. The cards are really cool, but the card stock on it is comical, and the actual playbook is probably about 15 pages long. Something like this, there's a lot more meat to it for the price. Same thing with another RPG that I've been looking at, the Marvel Multiverse RPG, which that is a nightmare. But that would actually be a really interesting thing to do sometime, is do the original playtest book side by side with the new book, because that playtest book is... But I feel like the price on this was actually a really good price, though. For 20 to 40 bucks, I would happily pay that out of pocket and be like, I feel like I got my money's worth.
Yeah, for a game like this, for $20, you can't beat it. For a hardcover, you want to support the developers, even better. I mean, what's a player's handbook for D&D is going for what? 50, 60 now?
230.
Yeah,
if they have their way.
And you would need 2 more books for that just to be able to think about playing in the game.
Can I tangent real quick
on
books for D&D? Because they recently got rid of one of their publishers can no longer carry books, Penguin something.
Really?
Yeah. So most game stores are going to really struggle to get stock in for D&D books now, very intentionally. It's very much a money grab on Wizards of the Coast part. So
hey, we would never badmouth anybody on here. Shout out to GW.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trying to force scarcity on people.
And the comparison between Evil Hat and Wizards of the Coast is going to come up again when we talk about the game license thing. But I just want to say real quick, screw you guys for cutting Penguin House.
There's a right way to do things.
Yeah, and that's not it.
And not Penguin House. They're the best.
They have penguins. They have cute little penguins on things.
Okay, as a teacher though, like Penguin House is a staple. Like they're very much the beloved in the teaching community. So for boxing them out, that's insane. Like they've always been very good about their practices, which maybe was why they didn't want to.
Yeah, they were like, they're too noble.
I think it's more they're trying to make that push to all online content.
They are, yeah.
Which is stupid.
It is.
There's small communities who don't have access to the internet who live playing your games.
That being said, though, that's why I docked the point is that there wasn't a PDF version available. They had the assets, but that didn't look like it came with a PDF version. The only way to get the PDF is by buying the book.
Yeah.
And, a high schooler, $20 is a lot. Even if you did $15 for a PDF only, it just makes it the barrier of entry lower for a demographic that would love this game.
That said, if you delve hard enough, you might be able to...
Yes, you can find anything if you look hard enough, but if you want to support the creators, just meet us halfway. Have it on all platforms so no one has an excuse and everyone can get it legally.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like they'd have to go through the effort of making new PDFs for all. They already exist.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It should just be an option to be able to go online and buy a PDF.
Yeah, because I needed the PDF for doing the having all the stuff available on my phone too. So I did have I think I stole Chris's PDF.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but
he has the book and it's all tabbed and nice.
Yeah.
When it comes to other PDFs.
Yeah, going into extras, before we get too sidetracked. I gave this a 2. We'll go into what they have available for community a little later, but for actual game content, there is only one additional book for this. It's Tome of Mysteries. It's $25. It has a couple adventures. It had 2 additional archetypes, which are now also in the hardcover edition for the book. But I'm a little surprised that they don't have a few more pre-made adventures for this after almost 10 years. Player content is nice, but it's also very hard to determine if player content is balanced.
Or good.
Or good, yeah. Having some adventures that are made by the people who made the game, who work closely with the game, would be a little more reassuring, honestly.
And we were talking about this before we started recording, but I'll say it again. I think they were kind of taking the Bethesda approach to this sort of thing, where they release the base game and they expect the community to do a lot of the work. They released all of the tools necessary to create your own modules. And I think and I don't know the developers, so I'm just taking a wild guess here. But I think it's more of the community knows what the community wants, and the community will provide for itself. That being said, I still docked half a point for the reasons you said. It's been 10 years. It would be nice to see at least 1 or 2 modules come out. But
even Bethesda slaps out an expansion every now and then.
Yeah, well, it's more patches now, and they're for $60.
Yeah.
I gave it a 1.5. I don't see room for the expand. I don't see a need for them. Like, they put the 1 out, that's great. But I don't see where they could take it elsewhere without it looking like a cash grab.
See, I gave it a 2 just because I am a fan of developer-created content as opposed to community-created content. Because I play Call of Cthulhu a lot. I make a lot of my own modules for Call of Cthulhu. I think I ran Masks once. And it's so goddamn large that it's just insane. So I've looked at a lot of community content, and quite honestly, I always feel like if I want something short and sweet, I'm probably just going to do my own thing. And it's nice to have that developer backing, because you can always just pull, even if it's this whole large grand scale campaign, you can pull like a section or 2 out and use that for your own mini session.
Fair enough. Should we have that talk about licensing now?
Yeah, probably.
OGL.
Yeah, so I if anyone's been paying attention to tabletop game news at all with the last year, Wizards of the Coast recently tried to update their open game license, which would force content creators to either foot the bill for what they produce or have to not be paid for content that they make anymore. And I know they went through a few iterations where they tried to retroactively say, well, if you already made it, it doesn't count, or this or that. And they had so much negative feedback that they just shut the whole thing down. And they're just not going to do open game license, I think, for one D&D, which they're still working on. Compared to this, where I don't know all the legalese, so this does not count as a legal defense if you ever get in trouble. But from what I understand, as long as you put something in your content saying this is not produced by Evil Hat Games and what game it's for and all that stuff, you can sell content for this on like DriveThruRPG. You can make your own content and sell it on Roll20, on Foundry, on wherever you need to sell product, and you're not going to get in trouble with them. And I think it's probably even encouraged because, like we said before, like with Bethesda, where they encourage fan-made content and everyone gets what they want.
Fair. And we're sure this is sold like on
You can go on DriveThruRPG right now and find modules to buy.
Okay.
I'm sure if they weren't allowed, they would have been taken down by now.
No, that's very fair, but that's a very interesting concept. You haven't really seen stuff like that in recent years, like 20 years or so, where you're seeing people who do, self-made modules that are able to be published in any game, I think.
I'm pretty sure Chaosium does that as well. Because, once again, Call of Cthulhu, the player base, does a lot of modules. Most of them are terrible, I will say that. But they do a lot of player-made modules, and I've seen Chaosium actually take some player-made modules and kind of tweak them, a la Bethesda.
Yeah.
Where they're like, hey, that was a really cool idea. We're going to do it because we're familiar with this. So I did slap this with a 3 for community. I haven't really looked into a lot of the modules that people have made for this. It's also my first time playing it, so if I did, I wouldn't really know what I'm looking for. But I feel like something like this either has a large following or has potential to have a large following.
It has potential to have a large following, but when I've talked to other people who play tabletop, not many people know it off the bat without me having to describe it more in depth. I will say with this licensure, though, which I love, this shows how much they believe in their product, that they don't have to stranglehold it and make sure they get every dime out of it. Yeah. For them, this has enough validation already that they just want people to know that it's not directly from them, but still has to do with it. Like it shows that they trust their community and they know how good their product is.
They have confidence and they feel like they have staying power.
Oh yeah, they do. As long as it needs to catch on more than it does. But
it has been featured in some actual play podcasts and stuff. I know Chris and Jeremy both heard about it through Adventure Zone.
Yeah,
because apparently Adventure Zone covered it at one point. I don't listen to Adventure Zone, so I don't know, but I'm sure they're great. Some of my friends like them.
Shout out to Adventure Zone.
Yeah, sure. They have comic books. You should check them out. But yeah, I gave it a 3 for community because I feel like that's a big push in the right direction for game development. Because at the end of the day, people still have to buy your book to play the game. So
yeah,
why not just let other people make the modules and make some extra cash off of it?
Yeah, that's a very good way to look at it. I gave it a 3 for community as well. I have not looked myself, but based off of all of the things I've heard through you guys, it sounds like it's got a fairly healthy community surrounding it, even if it is a smaller game.
Yeah. It probably has one of the bigger communities for an open an open RPG. Yeah.
I have no baseline for what is a larger community, so
comparable enough to
yeah. More than 10. Okay. That is a threshold I think then we would have a good community here because we have like 10 listeners.
Hey.
Woo! Woo! Please share this with your friends.
In a hobby that has been primarily dominated by like 3 different tabletop games, any community where you have frequent player-made content, I think, is considered a healthy community.
Yeah, I don't believe I can name 4 big RPGs that like everyone's heard of. I think I can only name 3.
Cyberpunk, Call of Cthulhu, and Dungeons and Dragons.
I didn't even think Cyberpunk because they kind of disappeared for a while, and when they came back, I was going to say Pathfinder.
Fair enough, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I knew Shadowrun before I knew Cyberpunk.
Which Shadowrun just kind of disappeared.
That's okay. Their weapon systems were... that is one of my passes. There's like... It's no sports, no Star Wars, and I will never do Shadow. No, I tried it once, and just the way they have weapon arrays and things, I was just out.
Cyberpunk wasn't much better.
Cyberpunk's weapon system is beautiful, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
When are we covering Cyberpunk, guys?
Hopefully over the summer when I actually have time to read things.
I could. I'm familiar enough with the universe.
I'm not, so I would need someone to run it.
I would happily. There's very few RPGs that I like running. Cyberpunk's one of them, Edge is one of them, and Call is one of them. And I've done one of those 3 on this podcast.
Yeah. So, going into enjoyment, I give this a 3. There's a reason that I recommend we play it. I really enjoy this game.
That was a solid 3 for me. Getting that whole Scooby-Doo energy in there.
Oh yeah, and our group was comical to say the least.
Oh, yes.
That was one I wish we had recorded, but just time constraints lately have made that nearly impossible to record.
We can run through what our characters did and how they all knew each other at one point, but I gave it a 2.5, just because, once again, it did kind of drag towards the end, and I feel like that took a little bit away from me, but looking back on it, it's something I would happily play again. And that's saying something for an open-ended RPG, because I'm the grumpy old man when it comes to those.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone here who didn't have at least some fun playing this.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to give it a 1.
Even when things have been drawn out more, I don't think I've ever not enjoyed a game of Monster of the Week. The only time I've had a difficult time with it was when we did one session that was like 7, ended up being like 7 meetings because people couldn't get their shit together. But like...
People we know?
I know, right?
Unheard of. Most organized group.
But as I said, that's just a matter of number of players for that one. So don't play with 7 people and you'll be fine.
Play with 2. Make it weird. Just get a DM. Stare at each other. Make it a battle of wits.
Now that would be an interesting game. It's just one person versus the Dungeon Master.
Well, that's how my cousins play. For every game they play, it's just the 2 of them. They don't really have big groups. And they love it, but it's not my thing.
So for a recommendation, would you guys recommend this to someone?
Oh, yeah.
I would recommend it to certain people.
I would recommend it to most people.
Yeah, I think that's a clear distinction. I don't think I would recommend this to every single person.
I'm not going to go running through the streets of New York being like, you all need to play Monster of the Week, but there's groups that I would happily recommend this to. I gave it a solid 2.
Your Call of Cthulhu players, I think, would like this a lot more than, say, your traditional D&D players.
Fair enough, yeah. I did give it a 3, but I could also see where you're coming from, where like someone who's more into the fantasy genre might not like a more modern setting.
And I'm glad that you see it that way, because that's kind of my big justification for it. I don't think it deserves a whole point off, but I'm going to give it a whole point off anyway. I like my fantasy games. If Elven Folk had a system this streamlined and easy, and you didn't have to make a ton of background characters for each player, that would be my game. This, unfortunately, is the new game, though. No, I shouldn't say unfortunately, because
I feel like you could theme it, though. You could definitely have old school. You could change the weaponry, so instead of having a gun, you have an arrow. Like, I feel like this could be an easy switch over, and I'm sure someone in the community has done that on drive-thru. But it would be an easy switch to go, like, werewolf hunting in a town.
Yeah, you could easily do knights and witches as opposed to hobos and mummies.
Yeah.
Although I would definitely love to do, like, an 17th, 18th century werewolf
Oh, that would be really
hunt
cool.
with this. Yeah, that would be pretty amazing.
All
Actually.
right, so we do need to record for Twitch this game. You want to do a one-off one of these nights?
I could
I
do a
wouldn't mind
Descendant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the opposite.
I'd love
Descendant.
to get back to streaming a little bit more. It was fun with the camping with the bards.
Yeah. I was talking to Ian about that, but we can talk about that
Okay.
afterwards.
You don't need to hear this, guys. We'll
You'll only hear the outcome.
yeah. For both our sanities. Replay value. I would play this every day if I could. I'll be honest, I like open-ended, and this is so streamlined. I feel like I could get a whole bunch of people to go in and out of a campaign, and I would do this forever.
I didn't even think about playing it that way. I gave it a 2 for the sole reason that you're limited in the amount of level ups that you can have. If you did want to run something slightly longer, you kind of boxed in at a certain point where you have your standard level ups and then you have your advances, but there's only an opportunity for like 5 or 10 of those actual level up moments. I know I'm spoiled by other RPGs where I get 30 levels, but I
got an idea concept for you. Based off Scooby-Doo. After it's leveled up, reboot.
now that's a cool idea.
I actually think there are options for retiring characters.
I
Yeah,
did
yeah.
notice that too, and that's why I'm like 5 to 10 ish instead of like a solid 10, because I think 2 or 3 of those advanced options are you retire, or I know at least for me it was you strike it big, and that to me says I'm done with this.
But I feel like it'd be very easy to make this like seasons of a show and really lean into the TV aspect of it. And then just after a couple seasons, we reboot it. That's what they do to Scooby-Doo forever. It is a ghost of what it once was.
Very much so.
The Snoop gets a Netflix deal. I gave it a 2 for replay value. As someone who did do one of these once a week for like a month and a half to 2 months, it can get a little tedious sometimes. There are definitely some restraints on like level caps and stuff, and the luck points also are a big thing.
Oh, I
because
forgot about
those
that.
do not
Those
refresh.
I
Yeah.
feel like the DM could definitely sprinkle in as just like a DM thing.
There's probably a way to get your luck points reduced.
That is in one of the level ups. One of the base level ups is you reduce your luck counter by 1.
yeah, but it's
So-
slow.
Oh, I even mean like a DM could, how we do inspiration in D&D could be a similar thing where it could be like, oh, you managed to make the best possible outcome. Here, have 1 reduction.
So one thing that I do want to mention, and I wasn't really sure where to put it, it seems like if you go at this game in your typical RPG sense of there is a problem, we want to exterminate it, it's a very lethal game. And you might make it out of that encounter fine, but if you're doing a long-term campaign, you're not getting away with that twice.
No.
And so for that, I ended up taking a 0.5 point off. I absolutely love this game, but I don't see the potential of a long-term character. Like a long-term character. If you were to have a cycle of them, like, you know, this week we have a guest star and you bring in another character for that, then like that could work. But I don't see a good campaign system here.
Yeah.
And it's not really meant to be a forever campaign kind of thing for all these characters either.
Yeah. They're supposed to be human. They're not some immortal god that you decided to create in your mind.
It's not like D&D where once you hit 20th level, you're basically immortal.
It's not like
Yeah.
Call of Cthulhu where you play
Well,
80 sessions with the same character and you have 100 stat and everything.
This game strikes me as something that's somewhat inspired by like classic D&D systems, where it's you hit 0 hit points, you're dead. Roll a new character. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it works with the setting and the way the game is set up. You know, it adds that level of challenge that I think is lacking in a lot of modern RPGs.
You're just a dude who has something that the other person doesn't.
Yeah.
In my case, it was a car.
In my case, it was a TV show.
We didn't need that.
In my case, it was a shotgun in my overalls.
And corn!
Yes, you're right. The cornfield did help a lot.
It did.
I got to be a mummy. I was happy.
Me too.
My favorite part, sliding scale time.
Sliding scales.
Oh yeah.
I give it a 2 for innovative. Like I should have given it a 3. I was being a little harsh because it's already a very high-ranking game for me. But it definitely it makes things concise in a way that I don't see a lot of other open-ended do.
That's fair. I ended up giving it a 2 for classic, for entirely the wrong reasons now that I'm thinking about it. But it feels like a lot of these other games in some ways. It does have that kind of. I think the innovative part is really just the way turn order works for me. Character creation, I've seen other games that do character creation like that. I believe Escape Triassic Park had a very similar character creation.
Yeah, kinda.
I mean, you had the grids and the charts. The only real difference was you had to roll for the stuff rather than just picking them.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that's a bad thing, but...
Well, I had you roll for it. That was like a me thing. You could have chosen if you wanted to. I thought it was better to randomize it. But, no, I did give it an innovative 3. I do see where you're coming from with classic, though. You know what game you're probably thinking of when you're looking at this? If I can make a guess.
What?
Kids on Bikes.
Yes.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Very much so.
If you like Call of Cthulhu and you like Kids on Bikes, you'll probably like this game.
Yes, I do.
That said, the pre-made character sheets, the pre-made stats, the streamlined character creation, the open-ended game where the DM doesn't actually roll anything, I felt those were very innovative play styles for a game.
So I actually am going to be the voice of unreason, as usual, when we get the sliding scales. I only gave it a 1 in innovative just because, as you said, though, it's these things that all of these other RPGs do, but it's cobbled together in a nice way. It's the best possible Frankenstein, but I wouldn't say that that's necessarily innovative. It's that they pulled what they liked from other things, and it's all the better for it. I'm glad they didn't go off the deep end and were like, you know what, we're just going to do our own thing that nobody's ever seen, because that would have been a disaster. But
to be fair, I think the only 3 innovative we've ever given on this type of a game was card-based instead of dice-based. Help me.
Oh, on Upwind.
Upwind.
yes,
I think that was the only
that's
time.
innovative
Yeah.
in a great way.
So I think that's the only 3 we've ever had on this.
Yeah, so I ended up giving it a 1 in innovative, and I don't mean that as like any sort of diss towards the game. It's just that it's not very original in its concepts, but it is smart the way that they took concepts from other things and put it together.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Did we get you for innovative? Or
No, I did that first.
that's right, you did. I'm losing my mind. But
It's late, guys.
we have another sliding scale. I gave this a simple 2. I felt like it's the fact that it's very streamlined made this pretty easy to understand. There are definitely some things that could be on the keeper sheet and the player sheet, like what the weapons do or how combat works, because it should be straightforward, and yet every time I play this, I'm always like, I don't attack or anything. It just instantly hits. That feels wrong, and it slows it down every time I enter combat playing or running this.
I would be kind of curious to find somebody who's never played a game like this before and see how they run it as a DM. I think a lot of us have been spoiled by D&D and other RPGs that, I mean, in a good way, explain things better, and we kind of just know what these things mean.
I think younger kids would understand that concept more about, like, if you hit somebody, they're going to hit you back right away. They're not going to wait a second. So I feel like younger crowds would pick onto it easier than we have.
Fair.
Usually the game master has to balance narrative versus trying to make a challenge for the player. In this instance, any move you make against the enemy, it's a self-inflicted wound automatically. You're more killing yourselves than I am.
My favorite part about Call of Cthulhu is when I get to break out the dice. Because I'm just like, oh, you've done it now.
That kind of leads to the need for creative problem solving instead of
And
fighting.
yeah, that's what it meant.
Yeah.
It's meant to push.
Yeah.
Which is actually why I gave this a complex 1, because it's something that I don't really feel like a lot of people who are familiar with RPGs would understand until their first run through. When we were like, oh yeah, let's attack the mummy, I was like, oh, we're gonna whoop this thing's ass. And then I realized how combat worked, and I was like, "Oh, this is."
In our defense,
This
I
is a
think we could
problem.
have taken the mummy if we just kind of kept going for it, and
Well,
old man
one of
Merkin
us,
wasn't hovering away.
one of us would have been able to take the mummy by the end of it. Maybe.
Merkins.
Yeah.
Old man Merkins.
Merkins almost died twice.
But did he?
He should have.
Yeah. He's an old man.
I was so ready to just leave you in that garden fire.
I did not want to leave old man Merkin, and it was a butterfly fire. Thank
Oh
you.
my gosh.
It was a butterfly garden. The butterflies, thankfully, were not on fire.
We opened the doors to shoo the butterflies out.
Could you imagine how
Technically, they were
tragic
around.
that would be if their little wings were just
Flaming
burning
butterfly.
everything?
That's so sad.
To be fair, I had a whole death scene planned out for old man Merkin, so it wasn't a huge
You
loss either way.
stole their thunder.
I know. I couldn't.
Old
let
man Merkins was going to be a martyr.
I needed
And
his
instead-
cornfield.
You would have had them. Now he's just alive and charred.
For me, I gave this a 3 simple, getting back on track so I can go to bed tonight.
I'm sorry. I also gave it a simple 3. I think this is a very easy to understand game. It's very streamlined. I don't know about you guys, but I picked it up almost immediately.
Oh yeah.
Woo! Outlier and sliding scale still. As always. It's what I do.
So going into final scores, I gave this a 37 out of 42, which is definitely one of my higher scores.
38.
36.
32. I will say confidently with my full chest. But that is also just because going into it, I didn't feel like it was going to be my style of game, and I ended up loving it. So that is good.
That's a good score for someone who doesn't play these very often.
Yeah.
And tries to avoid
Well,
them.
I do play them often, and that's the problem.
Any last comments for the game?
I feel like we covered a lot.
We
Yeah.
covered a lot of ground.
I think this would be good for younger crowds too, because it doesn't have necessarily violence as the headliner.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
Yeah, so like if you're trying to get a kid into TTRPGs, like end of middle school, high school, this is a solid one.
I could see where it would turn violent, but it doesn't present it.
It doesn't have to.
Yeah.
And
So
kids
it
are
would
violent
depend on
monsters.
it would depend on the group that you're running. Some middle schoolers will be violent in any game you give them. Just the nature
Some
of middle
will be-
school.
Yeah.
Some will find those creative problem solvings in ways you don't expect because you don't think like them anymore.
Some
Because-
kick you under the table as you play.
Yeah.
Because
See, I
they
told you,
watched Home
turn
Alone
violent.
last weekend.
Yeah.
You know?
You know, they watched Home Alone for the first time and they're like, oh my gosh, we can cover the floor in grease.
That poor giant, that D&D campaign. Dude, that was brutal. Anyways,
Anyone else have comments?
no, I was pleasantly surprised. That's my only comment.
I want more, Ian.
we can do more.
Please.
All right. And with that, we're closing out our 2nd anniversary. Thank you, everyone, for listening to our Halloween episode. If you want to learn more about upcoming events, you can find us on X at Dance with Bards, on Mastodon at dancewithbards@crater.gg, or on Blue Sky at dancewithbards at bluesky.social. You can also look us up on Facebook, and the best way to get in touch with us is either on our Discord, which you can find links to on all of our socials, or by email at dancingwiththebards@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone. Once again, it's been another great year.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Happy spooky season! Woo!